This is the Friday Rugby Preview on Borders Rugby Radio with Stuart Cameron.
Hello and welcome to the Friday Rugby Preview. It's Cup weekend in Scotland again, and we have one Borders team in the semi-final. Hawick are away to Glasgow Hawks in a game being played at Highland. Kelso need just 1 point to gain promotion to the Premiership for the first time since the 80s, and Berwick are trying to survive the 5-team relegation drop out of National 2 with 2 games to go. So plenty to come in the programme with Dale Clancy and myself over the next half hour or so. We'll be hearing from all the local teams from the club scene, but let's start with Dale, and Hawick's amazing unbeaten season continues with potentially 2 games to go.
You know, we've spoke week on week about how impressive Hawick have been all season. You know, started the season with that draw against Selkirk, but ever since then it's went from strength to strength. And you know, it's great to see as well some of their players getting other experiences, like Hector Patterson in Scotland age grade scoring a try against Ireland, and then you've got players going on to the Super Series as well. So you know, and Jay Linton playing for Falcons and also for Edinburgh. You know, these players are starting to get recognition, which is exactly the same that happened to Mar when they, you know, won the Premiership. Their players started to get picked off slightly, but you know what an achievement it would be if they go on to do the double. It's been so long since they won the Premiership or the Cup, and it would be great if they were able to, you know, do the double again, because the last time that they won either trophy was when they done the double back in 2002.
Now, we've been fairly critical, and fairly so, I think, of the overlapping of the season for many, many years. And one of the problems is that some clubs have to give up their venues to other sports like athletics, and that's what's happened in this case with Glasgow Hawks. So Ballgrey not available, and the game has been switched to Highland, home of Hillhead Jordan Hill from the 3rd Division. And that ground is not really used to having things like the Cup semi-final, so it could be quite interesting, a bit of a leveller for both sides.
I remember after New Year last year, we went to what would have been a technical neutral venue for Hawick versus Hawks. It was in Glasgow.
That was the 3G at sort of a police ground at Carther near.
Yeah, and it was, you know, Hawks put in a brilliant performance and made Hawick look second best in pretty much all facets of the game. So,
very windy day, though, wasn't it? And wet. And
well,
you were nice and comfortable.
From where you were standing, it was fine where I was. It was roasting. I was almost down to my mankini when I was commentating, but. You know, it was one of those things that it was a bit unnatural for all the teams. So you know, Hawks put in a good performance. I think this is a different Hawick side though. You know, they've kind of learnt, and they've got the scars from last year, almost getting to the positions that they wanted to. Their squad, even though they've lost some personnel, is still really strong. Like Hawks and the other teams in the semis, maybe apart from Ayr, you know, they've all had players go and play something else now because of the clash in fixtures, the clash in competitions, which is it's a huge frustration for club rugby. You look at the Melrose Sevens at the weekend past, like Kelso playing the team that they did. You've got Hawick playing the team that they did. You know, they could play pretty well and get through some of the rounds to play the invitational teams, but you know, it's just the nature of the fixtures at the moment. But yeah, you don't know what this what this ground is going to do in terms of the context, but you do feel that Hawick, what they've done this season, they've earned the merit to be favourites going into this game. They could play it on the moon for a week here. You know, they've certainly the better side of the two. They just need to go out and prove it now.
Well, let's hear from head coach Matty Douglas.
Cup semi-final, knockout rugby, and obviously been a bit of a disjointed couple of weeks. We're not playing since the Accies game and GHK pulling out the cup, and so you know, we managed to get a hit out with the Boroughmuir Bears 2 weeks ago, which was really beneficial. Really tested us and kind of showed us where we're at, and look, we've prepped as well as we can. Glasgow Hawks are a tough team to beat up in Glasgow. You know, we managed it around 5-6 weeks ago before the playoffs, so we know what it takes to win. But look, they had a great win against Heriots in the semi-final, so they'll be keen to try and put one over us. But look, we've trained well. We've had a big talk around our discipline the last couple of weeks in terms of trying to keep 15 men on the park. It's kind of killed us in key moments of the games, giving away penalties and giving away silly cards. So look, it's something we've worked really hard on, and look, we're keen to really go attack this game on Saturday and play with a bit of confidence and really ask Hawks questions. So look, it's a knockout rugby, but our last couple of games have been in this situation, and players are starting to realise and know what it takes to win these games. So look, we have to be confident going into Saturday, but on the flip side, we have to get everything right in terms of what's worked well for us. So a couple of changes since the Accies game. Stuart Graham misses out due to suspension, so Sam Frizzle comes in to start at 6. Delighted to see him get an opportunity in the first team. He's played really well for the Force. He's obviously had a couple of things going on off the field, and look, just a credit to him to bounce back the way he has, and keen to see how he goes on Saturday. And Lewis Ferguson comes back in on the wing for Charlie Welsh. So on the whole, a settled squad. Probably been one of our strengths is our consistency in selection, and look, it's a massive opportunity for the players again to write a bit of history and reach a cup final and get a day out at Murrayfield.
Well, Hawks have been a bit of a bogey team for Hawick. The last team, of course, to beat them at Mansfield Park, that goes back to 2019. And, of course, they have beaten them as well several times at Belgrade.
Yeah, I think you look back at that game that we covered last year, just after New Year, and it was one of those freak games because Hawick were in a good bit of form and really trying to push to get that home semi-final, and then came up against Hawks, who were also, equally trying to strive to get into those positions, and it was really one-sided. Hawks were the better team. Even I remember back to the game at Mansfield, it was close. I think it was about 14 points to 9 or something. It was a really, really sticky encounter. But sometimes teams just clash, and I find that the clashes between Hawks and Hawick are it's difficult for both sides. I just think that Hawick have too much quality now. I feel that before they got dragged into that really robust, powerful, forward-dominated game that Hawks are historically been really good at doing, but Hawick now have that balance. They've got really good forwards, really good ball carriers. They've got really intelligent backs. I think that centre partnership between Ethan Riley and Andrew Mitchell is phenomenal. It's actually brought the best out of Andrew Mitchell. I was almost fearful for him that he was always going to be a promising youth, and he was then going to start to, just settle and stagnate. But Ethan Riley has been, the best thing that's happened to him. So, it's brilliant. But in terms of cups, when it gets to the latter stages, it was Hawick that actually beat Glasgow Hawks in extra time in the final back in 2002. So, I think they'll be hoping that away from home they can repeat that again.
Talking about Glasgow Hawks and talking of extra time, they had to use extra time to beat Gala, didn't they? So that could have gone the other way. We could be seeing a Hawick Gala game, couldn't we?
Yeah, that would be brilliant. But then it's the same. It's just what we could have had this year would, in terms especially the coverage that you give, Stuart, like, we almost could have had a Hawick Selkirk semi-final in the Premiership. Almost, it could have been Hawick versus Gala in the Cup semi-final, which would have been, it would cast eyes on the Borders to see how much they back their home clubs, in terms of the numbers that you'd get at the ground. But it is what it is, and we've got Glasgow Hawks versus Hawick, and you would say, as I've said before, that Hawick will go into this favourites, but it is Cup rugby, and that is the difficulty. Like, it's not always the best team in the country that win the Cup. It's just who on the day can be the better side. And I think the other semi-finals is equally as interesting. Ayr versus Mar. That's a huge, huge game in terms of the west of Scotland. It is the derby. That is their, Hawick Gala, Hawick Melrose, Hawick Kelso, whoever. That's going to be a really interesting semi-final weekend because it's a tough final. For whatever team gets through, it's a really, really tough final.
And credit to Mar as well, going up to Millennium Park. I didn't see this coming at all. I thought Curry would have been winners, maybe not comfortable winners, but winners nevertheless. But it really was a big win, wasn't it, in all aspects for Mar. And a great kind of send-off for Craig Redpath, of course, who will be retiring at the end of the season after about, 14 seasons or something, taking them from the real small divisions right up. And you mentioned a big derby, Ayr against Mar. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been a big derby.
No, it would have been a pre-season fixture to, try and get some game time in maybe the fringe players, and now what they've done at Mar is phenomenal. For the years we've seen clubs try and do it, and for one reason or another they've not been able to continue that. Like how with Fife, for example, pushed up the leagues. You think about like even teams like Peebles and Biggar. Over the time they've pushed up through the leagues, not been able to stay, and then plummet down. What Mar have done is phenomenal. And it's going to be a great semi-final across there. I didn't see that coming, but Mar were able to do it in the Premiership final last year. So they're not scared of going to Millennium. but it's a completely different kettle of fish when they're playing their close neighbours.
And Ayr was certainly very impressive against Selkirk. I mean, we know it was a below-strength Selkirk side, but nonetheless, this was a great performance from Ayr. And if you repeat that sort of confidence in their play, well, who knows?
Yeah, in the back row, like Potty played really well, flanker. They had a really solid scrum. They won the fight on the floor every single time. When the ball was there to be won, they jackled or they pounced on that loose ball. I think perhaps the performance of Bova and McCluskey in the centres got the best out of the wingers in the back three, because they were completely on fire. So if Mar are able to kind of stifle that in midfield, you just won't get the back three playing, which is a huge weapon for Ayr. But you just find that, I think that step up in quality. Ayr are allowed to play free-flowing rugby, allowed to show their skill set, because they're a really skillful club, from the top to the bottom. They have been, because of the success that they've got, but they're able to, against the kind of more quality opposition, which Selkirk are, they're probably allowed to play too much rugby. In National 1, sometimes it's a complete dogfight, so you've got to try and win games in different manners and means. You maybe don't get to utilise your quality players all the time because the ball's stuck in the forwards or you're being stretched too much. So, it's quite one-dimensional in National 1. There's different facets when you get up to Premiership level, which, could be a bit of a leveler coming at the weekend.
I can't call either of them.
Hawick final.
I think Ayr might just squeeze it at home. If the crowd gets behind them and they get a good start, I think this could be a bit of an upset. But I'd love to see Hawick win. I just think you're playing on the Hillhead Jordan Hill pitch as well is a bit of a leveler. But as you say, Hawick have come through a few wobbles this season, let's be honest, but they're still unbeaten, and the confidence that brings to any side. It's nice to go into the weekend literally not knowing what's going to happen. Yeah,
and it's good because it's, we've moaned about the Cup and the format of it. Teams dropping out. I think that, the funny one about GHK obviously tried to drop out 3 times and just not able to until that last moment. But, it's Ayr are the holders. Obviously with COVID, it's the first time the Cup's been kind of brought back. So there's a nice little story in there. Are they able to be a Nat 1 team getting to the final? Hawick against Hawks. Can Hawks upset the champions? And Mar, they've never won the Cup, so can they get to Murrayfield? There's so many nice stories in this Cup, but it's just it's nice to see it have a little bit of clout now when it gets into the business end. So certainly it's going to be an interesting weekend, and it'll be a great culmination for what's been a great year for Hawick if they're able to get to the final. But still a lot of work to do.
Well, let's move on to National 1. It's the final hurdle for Kelso. They need just 1 point to secure promotion to the Premiership at Highland. Of course, they haven't been in the Premiership since the 1980s, so a huge deal. And let's hear from Kelso Director of Rugby, Neil Hinnigan.
We go up there in good spirits. A few people missing. Andy Tate's unavailable. Ewan Knox is suspended. Liam Hirdman's still out injured, unfortunately. And the Southern Knights have taken Cammy Thompson away as a back row cover for their match on Saturday. So, we'll miss him as well. So, a few changes. Grant Shields starts at number 1 with Charlie Marshall, Alan Frame, Angus Cumming, Keith Melbourne, Archie Cowens, Cammy Brown and Bruce McNeil make up the pack. Nick Stingle comes in at 9. Murray Hasty, Frankie Robson, Dwayne Patterson, Angus Roberts, Hamish Tweedy comes in on the wing, and fullback is Greg Ponton. Making up the replacements is Ashton Asante, Terry Logan, Liam Tate, Murray Woodcock and Mark Wilson. So good opportunity for everyone that's going up there. A few people going up to support, I think. So we'll hopefully can get a good result up there.
Neil Hinnigan, you can sense the nervousness of the situation there. It's been a long, long time since Kelso were at the top table of Scottish rugby. They need just that 1 point to secure promotion, but they have a plus 87 points difference between them and Ayr. So even if they lose, Ayr are going to have to put a lot of points on Gala and Stumel on the road to catch them. Of course, with Gala and Stumel having nothing to play for, that is a possibility. But remember, Kelso have never ended a match this season without at least a point secured. But we do know Highland have only lost 2 games at home this season. And of course, it's on a 3G pitch, and Kelso aren't great fans of 3G pitches.
No, but I think that they've got themselves in a great position, and we've always said this about points on the board, and Ayr obviously have a lot of work to do. But I don't think that really matters when it's in your hands. Like, Kelso know what they need to do, and still going up with a strong squad. You can hear the frustration in Neil's voice about some of the players that aren't available.
Cammy Thompson in particular.
Cammy Thompson, let's speak about Herdman, perhaps. Herdman is a quality player. When he's came back into the squad, he's really shown, his value to Kelso. He's a Premiership player. Cammy Thompson is a Premiership player as well, but obviously he's not going to be in the squad. And, you can hear the frustration because although they've got themselves into a great position, you want to finish the job. And I think there's always going to be that little nervousness until that final whistle goes, until you know your points tally. If you've done enough, there's still going to be the nerves there. They might be winning 30 points to nil at half time. The nerves will settle slightly, but they'll still be lingering in the background because Kelso know how big this game is. So will Highland. You talk about teams that haven't got anything to play for. They've got a lot to play for. Highland have got the chance to really upset the odds here and completely take the wind out of Kelso's sails. If Kelso leave with nothing, then, it's over air. Crack on, try and get into the Premiership. But, I don't think it'll happen. It's unlikely that it's going to happen. But, Kelso have had a phenomenal season. They're a team that have had their problems and they've had their issues and their difficult games. Their moments against likes of Gala when they got beat at home. I genuinely thought when they got beat at home at Gala, I thought might be where the wheels fall off. There was the 3 games, Gala, Melrose and Ayr, and I said they'll get a beat in at least one of them. I didn't think it'd be the Gala game, and then I got nervous for the next 2 because I do want to see Kelso go up. I was speaking to somebody as well, and they were mentioning about somebody claimed that they didn't feel I was a Gala fan as such, and I've always said that over the last few years Gala and Kelso have not been the most attractive teams to watch, but now they've got such a brand of rugby. They're good teams to watch. And Kelso and Gala both, especially in that game, showing how far they've come over the last few years. I'm a rugby fan, but I want to now see Kelso get over that line. All the other border teams can't go up. Kelso can. So, I'm backing Kelso, all behind them, want them to get at that point. If they go up there and get 5 points, Neil said they're in good spirits. They'll be in bloody great spirits coming back down. There'll be plenty of spirits flying about on the bus on the way back if they get that win. So, fingers crossed Kelso are able to get that over the line. You think of it now, when rugby's changed, like things have evolved and adapted over time. Hawick, Jed, Selkirk, Kelso, Premiership teams next year. What a league that would be for us.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Now, Neil and I have had a bit of banter over the last couple of weeks as well because I think 87 points difference is fine. I think that's going to be okay. He doesn't. He looks at kind of Gala, obviously got nothing to play for, Stumel nothing to play for, but Stumel in Inverleith have been really quite good this season. They've lost by just a couple of points. They've picked up losing bonus points at home in matches that they could have they could have easily won. They also scored a try bonus and a losing bonus point at home to Melrose, scoring 28 points just a couple of weeks ago, and that's whilst they were relegated. So I don't think any of the teams are just going to lie down and let Ayr kick them over with loads of points. I mean, yes, it could happen theoretically. You've also got the fact that if Ayr do win the cup semi-final, then they're going to put all their efforts into the final. So it's a really interesting balance. But as Neil says, we've got to get 1 point and that's it.
Yeah, and I think when we were at the semi-final between Ayr and Selkirk, when we were speaking after the game to various Ayr players, coaches, club members, the result that came through for Kelso was a complete kick in the nuts because they knew it was very, very unlikely. And even the captain was saying, well, we're still in the cup. We'll concentrate on the cup. They know that, it's highly... There's still a chance. They know it's highly unlikely that they're going to go up. But, it's difficult when you say teams have got nothing to play for. And I've been in this position as well, that you've got nothing to play for, but you're playing a team that are potentially going for promotion, and that's your incentive. Prove other people wrong. Everybody will be saying, nobody will be giving Highland much of a chance, but Highland will be going, well, look, our backs are against the wall, it's a free swing, we've got nothing to play for, and sometimes teams play a lot better when the gloves are off like that. So that's the beauty about rugby, that's the beauty about all sport. You can predict and call it as much as you want. You be bold with your predictions as well, put your neck on the line to say, I think Kelso will go up there and win, which I do, and if they don't, so what, I'm wrong. It's sport, but I genuinely think they'll go up there and they'll get the victory.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Preston Lodge last week at Falkirk. Who would have seen the fact that Preston Lodge would have got 2 bonus points, which now changes the dynamics of National 2, which we'll come to very, very shortly. There's lots to talk about this programme, there really are. And Andrew Fleming, by the way, will be our man at Inverness. He's going up by the train there and coming back on the bus. That's if we ever see him again, if they actually win, of course. But he'll be up there covering that one for us. Melrose are at home to Dundee for another dead rubber in National 1, but Bert Grigg wants to bow out as head coach with a win.
So we're looking forward to what's our final 15s game of the season, home to Dundee. Obviously, in terms of league, things are at our control in terms of promotion and stuff like that, but still an opportunity for us to finish as high as we can in National 1, and that's certainly something that we'll be striving for. Also an opportunity for a few youngsters, a few other boys, give them an opportunity for some rugby, but going in with full intentions of putting out a solid performance and finishing off our 15th season on a high with a good home win versus Dundee.
So hard really for both teams to get any enthusiasm up for this one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty short and sweet to speak about this game, because Melrose were almost in the hunt for promotion, and then it kind of fell off when they went down to Poynter Park, and since then they focused on the Border League, came up short in that, and then you start focusing on sevens, and really the 15s is an inconvenience at this stage, and everybody speaks about it, and there's no answer, because you just have to get on with it. You have to get on with it, battle through. Clubs need to work together to try and find the best solution. Players are sick of it. You're having conversations all the time about, I feel sorry for teams playing towards the end of the year, end of April. I was speaking to Greg Rayburn, and they've still got Kirkcaldy to play. Then they're done, so they're quite glad about that. But there's still some teams have got a couple of weeks, 3 weeks of playing 15s rugby, which is absolutely ridiculous at this stage. So yeah, it's just a game. Get it over and done with. Get up the road, and then they can probably focus on the sevens, and certainly in the Kings of the Sevens table, they've got a good squad. They performed pretty well at Melrose Sevens as well. So they've certainly got a chance. It's quite a level playing field in the Kings of the Sevens this year.
Well, also a dead rubber for Gala. They've got a long trek to Aberdeen Grammar, who are already relegated. And as we hear now from Craig Dodds, 10-team leagues can't come soon enough.
We make the long trip north to Aberdeen this week in a rearranged fixture that's now ended up being obviously the 15th of April. Definitely now at the stage of believing in these 10-team leagues. There's no way that National League clubs certainly should be playing rugby at this time of year. We've obviously got another 15s game next week, but I don't envy the guys that are having to play at the end of April to finish off their leagues. So bring on the 10-team leagues, and hopefully that'll sort it for us. But having said that, it gives an opportunity for a couple of Wands boys to come in, a couple of under-18s that have been cleared to play senior rugby. It gives them the opportunity to come in and put the right foot forward in terms of getting themselves ahead of next season and getting integrated within the squad. Listen, we're obviously missing a few guys. Marius he's playing for Stirling this week again, which is great in terms of Super 6, and it's great for him and his development. Obviously makes it a bit more difficult around our selection, but listen, we're going to support him in doing that as well and playing at the highest level. So we'll hopefully come away with a result from Aberdeen and then go to Berwick Sevens on Sunday before we have to obviously cover the Ayr game next Saturday and Langham Sevens. So there'll be opportunities for guys both weeks to put the right foot forward, and in terms of the under-18s and some of the senior guys that have maybe played second-team rugby this year.
Well, he's hit the nail on the head, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely. It is ridiculous that these teams are, still playing 15s rugby. We just spoke about it there a minute ago, but I don't see the purpose or the point in it. And it's in hindsight, isn't it? It's we've had these leagues for a while. We've had COVID. We've had restructures before that as well. But there's no reason as to why teams like Gala, Ayr, Melrose, Peebles, Berwick, all these teams that are playing national rugby, there's no reason why they're treated any differently to the likes of Hawick and Curry and Edinburgh Accies, because players don't want to be playing additional games. They want to play rugby. They want it well structured. They want it well mapped out, because life's busy. And, life's busy. Craig Dodds is explaining about going up to Aberdeen, and he's obviously got a new arrival imminently due, so it's a complete, that can't be helped, but it's a complete inconvenience sometimes to players, and you wonder why some players walk away from the game, because they want to either focus on sevens, or they're getting asked to play midweek, then get to play on the weekend, they're injured, or that something happens that means that they can't go to work. It's so complicated. Where now you get the 10-team leagues, and obviously with the new league structure in the Stuart Cameron Cup that we'll be playing next year.
No, it won't.
Will I think that answers a lot of questions. And then the regional stuff and the Scotland Club Internationals and the Super Series, it all then has its place. As a rugby fan, you can then start to engage in what you want and what you don't want, as opposed to coming at the weekend and going, there's Club 15s on, there's Melrose Sevens, there's the Super Series as well. There's age grade rugby, there's women's rugby on. What am I going to watch? Get the club game over and done with, and then the people that are going to support your, be the biggest supporters of your rugby, get them in a position where they can support teams that they want to watch. So, definitely 10-team leagues are I don't know, I see Craig said it's taken a bit of convincing for him, obviously, but yeah, I'm with him. 10-team leagues is the way forward.
Yeah, which of course it will be. So, let's see what happens next year. Obviously, the wheels go very, very slowly. It's down to the clubs ultimately, not the SRU. And of course, clubs have their own agendas. They want to play inter-district rugby. Some of them want to do it in January, February. Others, they want to do it after the season. There's a lot of people to convince.
Yeah, and I think like sometimes that is the worst thing, is when clubs, you might get the buy-in for most of the clubs, and it might be the right idea, but when people do have their own agenda or their own ideas, it's maybe not, it's difficult to say their own agenda, because that's me then just assuming that you're right. It's sometimes people see different things differently, but it's sometimes the complexities that they bring about with that make it really, really difficult to get good ideas through. And I find that it's frustrating, because it's been notorious in the borders, with the history that you've got in the borders. There's some people have created that history, some people have maintained that history, some people want their position in history. So it depends where the clubs are, but there's always somewhere in a little pod somebody who disagrees. For their own reasons or for whatever.
And that's absolutely fine, but you have to look at the big picture, and I think the big picture will evolve when the majority of clubs actually see it the right way.
The 10-team leagues and the cup structure, I think it is a good way forward, and it's probably that progressive way to say this is going to improve. That won't be the end product, because it will evolve and adapt, but sometimes teams, they do make things very, very difficult. Clubs make things difficult, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they make things difficult. It's their game. It's their game to try and create and manipulate and manufacture and change and adapt to whatever way suits them. And if it doesn't work, it's club's fault.
And of course, clubs do, some of them want a bit of a break during what is normally the autumn test. Of course, it's World Cup year that we're going into. So the way I kind of see it and think it will go we'll probably be starting all the leagues the first week in September. And there will be kind of a natural break coming up to, the World Cup and all the things that are happening round about that time. There's an argument for bedding down the 10-team leagues, first of all, before that happens. Okay, on to Berwick now. And they've been keeping us on the edge of our seats all season with some brilliant wins and some frustrating losses as well. No doubt they should have been much higher up the league, I think, this season, but they've had some really unfortunate close losses, and they find themselves battling it out now with Preston Lodge to survive the 5-team drop out of National 2. Here's head coach Colin Young.
This weekend we'll welcome Lasswade to Scrimmerson in, I suppose, really a must-win game. We've got 2 games left to play, and if we want to stay up in this division, we need to really win both of them. With PL last weekend picking up 2 valuable points away to Falkirk. We're much the same as where we've been most of the season. Jack Webster's coming back after an eye injury from our last game out. Unfortunately, we are missing Alec Orr for what I would say is the softest red card I've ever seen in my life. How anybody can deem that as a red card is beyond me. So we're still waiting for the SRU to sanction his suspension or ban. So we're without Alex, but we welcome back in Ben Nicholson, who wasn't playing up at Glasgow Accies, into the squad. So fingers crossed we can get the 2 results that we require between Lasswade and Preston Lodge the following weekend to stay in National 2.
So here's the deal. Preston Lodge managed an unexpected but hard-fought 2 points at promotion favourites Falkirk last week. That means the result of the Lasswade game for Berwick won't actually have any real significant effect on things, as it's likely to come down to who wins between Preston Lodge and Berwick next weekend, and that's going to be huge.
Yeah, what a difference a week makes. We were talking about the fixtures and talking about the fact that Berwick were targeting that Lasswade game, and a win would probably keep them up, and all of a sudden it changes with one freak result, as we say. You can predict whatever you want and it'll change within a week. So you look at the league now, if it's difficult to look at a league and then try and pick out the bottom 5 teams and just say that they're getting relegated. It is a restructure, so they're not going to be too far away from their level if they were to go down, but they know that those last 2 games are huge. A bad result this weekend makes it a really, really big challenge to try and go to PL and get that victory away from home. It's a difficult place to play. So, it's a huge, huge week. Berwick have done really well as well, and I just feel, we talk about those games that have been so narrow and so close that they've, it might be a penalty. Running Peebles close twice as well. You could essentially say there's 8 points there that they've, maybe not 8, maybe 6 points that they've given away there. They're the games that they could look back on and think that these are the games that could lose us our status in National 2. But they've done really well. They should be really proud of themselves to have the point tally that they do. Coming up a division, coming into a new league, accumulating that amount of points is just, the difficulty of the restructure means that they could fall into that trap door. Because any other year, a team coming up and finishing mid-table is progress. But it's just the kind of nature of the league. So 2 huge, huge games coming up for Berwick. And again, it's the same as I say about any other border team. I hope they get over the line. I hope they get that good result this weekend, and then they go up to PL and they put in a great performance, and whoever wins that one is going to stay in the division.
And it's interesting what you were saying right at the beginning there, because when we're planning our own coverage of games, 3 weeks ago we'd be looking, we might have to go to Highland here, whatever, or we might have to go to Berwick. And then all of a sudden, of course, Hawick's in the cup as well. We're going to try and cover everything as much as we can with very little resources. But we've got Andrew Fleming at Kelso, as I said. We've got Mickey and Otter covering the Berwick game, and Rob and I going to with Sam Matthews to Glasgow.
It's not easy covering all these games. Like I just pitch up most of the time when you're speaking about rugby. It's a great, I love it, But obviously the logistics that you have to go through, planning and organising people to go to games to provide the service that you do, it's absolutely phenomenal. We don't get that anywhere in Scottish club rugby. So it's great that it throws up these complications. But yeah, I hope Berwick get the win, and then it makes it a little bit easier to plan for the next few weeks.
Yeah, we're going to try and get someone at Preston Lodge anyway, as well as the Langham Sevens, but that's for 7 days' time. Meanwhile, let's go into the East League. Division 1, Duns are at home to Linlithgow, while in East 3, Hawick Quins can win promotion and the title if they get 2 points at Trinity Accies. Here's Captain Adam Hall.
Everyone at the club was really disappointed that the game didn't go ahead last weekend. We were all looking forward to having an opportunity to go and win the league at home. So it's a shame it didn't go ahead, but we've got the excitement back this week, and we've got a squad of 22 going up to Trinity to hopefully get the job done away from home this week. So we're optimistic that we'll have enough, hopefully, to win the game. Trinity are a bit of an unknown quantity. We've not played them this year, and they have picked up some good results, so we do expect them to be quite challenging at home. So it's not a foregone conclusion. We're going to have to go up there and put in a decent performance, and hopefully we can get the job done and enjoy the night.
Great season for them, and let's not forget as well that Hawick Quins were almost on the point of folding. They had a year off. They remember they won East League 1. They decided not to go for National League. A lot of their players decided to retire at that time. So after they decided that they had to have a year off, they were then put into East League 3, and they've battled their way back again. Great
resilience from the club, to get back into that position that they're in. Obviously, a lot of players and a lot of personnel in the town have been really loyal to that club, which you expect in Hawick. You expect that in that environment, because they're so passionate about what they've got in Hawick, be it rugby, common riding, people that have left the town and been successful. So it's certainly in terms of being a place that you get the backing of the locals. It's a brilliant town. But Quins have got themselves back in a position that they can find success and start to build again, and get that that little kind of second lift to breathe a bit of life back into the club, because it's certainly, remarkable that a team can almost fold and they can have a year out, because most clubs, I think, especially lower down the leagues, if you have a year out, I think you'd be away. So great to see Hawick Quins getting a bit of success this season.
Well, Galloway M, they're playing at 11 a.m. at Inverleith, as they're also in the Edinburgh Northern Sevens in the afternoon, which isn't ideal at all, and player coach Stuart Walker is clearly not happy.
It was another positive weekend for us. We did really well at the pre-qualification tournament at Melrose last Friday. We were pleased to beat Earlston. Obviously Edinburgh Uni was a challenging game, and they were an excellent outfit and did well to get to the final, so we've learned a lot from that tie. And the Medics on Saturday in their 15s game probably gave them a bit too much respect, but we managed to come back into it and only lost by a point in the end, so again, pleased with that. Looking forward to this weekend. It's been a bit of a week of bureaucracy. We'd requested dispensation because we were already going to Edinburgh Northern Sevens, and unfortunately things didn't quite work out, so we've got our game against Inverleith on Saturday morning, followed by another squad in the Sevens in the afternoon. Hopefully we can finish our 15s on a high and go up and get the full points against Inverleith. They'll be looking to get revenge from the last time we played, but we're positive we can go up and get the result. Afternoon we've got the Northern Sevens, which we're excited about. Really targeted the Sevens this year, and we're hoping to go up there and make some progress in that tournament. We're looking forward to it.
It's another own goal somewhere along the line, isn't it? That just shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, totally should. And I get his frustration. It's ridiculous that you've got to be able to play in the morning. And he's saying, and another squad are going to play in the afternoon. The other squad will have players who played in the morning, and that is completely ridiculous. If all the players come through it and they're fine, that's great. But it's the engagement, it's the fun in it. It's like players, especially like Galloway, like nobody will be getting any sort of financial contribution to play for that club. So to actually commit yourself to play a full 80 minutes and then try and play a sevens tournament, it's absolutely ridiculous. And for the fun, like if you asked me to do that when I was as keen as I've been as a youngster, I wouldn't have wanted to do that. So I just think it is completely ludicrous. Hopefully this is the last year that we've really got to bemoan this and complain about it, because hopefully the leagues and everything works a little bit better next year. I know the national leagues are restructured, but hopefully there's lessons learned this year, and there just needs to be a little bit more empathy in terms of clubs working together to find, and with the union as well, but finding a better place to play these. Like, why can these not be played on a Friday night or a Wednesday night or a training night? Get the games played midweek, because we've seen in the Border League final we got a good back in there because it was a little bit of a difference, in terms of getting a big crowd there on a Monday night. If there's games to be played, let's play them midweek. Clubs might not even like that. They might be saying, "Dale, go and shut up," because that's not going to be an option. But there has to be something different to stop players playing in the morning. They're not 12-year-old. These are 30-year-old, 40-year-old men sometimes. Their bodies are probably not as robust as they might have been when they were lively youngsters. So it's certainly something that needs to be avoided. But good on them. Brilliant, well done for contributing to both of them. They, against Earlston in the sevens, they played well. Stuart said there, obviously against Edinburgh Uni, it was a little bit more difficult. So, good on them for contributing to all these things, and hopefully they come through this weekend unscathed and they can live to fight another day and continue in the sevens.
Well, let's move on with the announcement of the 39-man squad for the South, who take part in the revised Inter-District Championship, which will see them play Edinburgh at Netherdale on Tuesday the 9th of May. Let's bring you the squad details in that were announced at 1 o'clock today. The forwards, first of all: Andrew Cochrane, Selkirk; Bruce McNeil, Kelso; Callum Rennick from Hawick; Fraser Rennick from Hawick; Luke Petty, Selkirk; Paul Bogey, Musselburgh; Sean Fairbairn, Hawick; Andrew McComb, Selkirk; Bruce Riddle, Selkirk; Craig Owenson, Musselburgh; Jay Linton, Hawick; Matt Carrier, Hawick; Paulo Ferreira, Jed Forest; Sean Muir, Hawick; Angus Dunn, Gala; Callum Cruikshanks from Melrose; Dalton Redpath, Hawick; Liam Scott, Gala; Nicky Little, Hawick; Scott McClymont, Selkirk; and Stuart Graham from Hawick. In the backs, it's Aaron McComb, Selkirk; Ben Gill, Gala; Danny Owenson, Musselburgh; Gareth Welsh, Hawick; Liam Herdman, Kelso; Sandy Watt, Musselburgh; Andrew Mitchell, Hawick; Bruce Colvin, Melrose; Donald Crawford, Melrose; Gregor Young, Jed Forest; Paul Cunningham, Musselburgh, Struan Hutchison from Melrose, Angus Roberts, Kelso, Craig Dodds, Gala, Frankie Robson, Kelso, Kirk Ford, Hawick, and if you're Ronan McKean fans, yes, the last one, Ronan McKean from Hawick. That is the 39-man squad. It will be reduced to 32 before the games as well. But fantastic for all the people selected. Commiserations for those who aren't. You'll notice there are a third of the squad from Hawick, which you would kind of expect. But there's 6 from Musselburgh in there. Musselburgh, of course, are joining up. It was going to be called, I think, the South and East Lothian and all the rest of it. But the South held firm and said, look, it's the South. But Musselburgh are in. And, of course, they are south of Scotland.
Yeah, definitely. I think that they obviously need to find the place, and although we've got the history behind the South, it does line up well to what the pathways are now in Scottish rugby for the youth, players. But they still have to retain a little bit. So I'm glad that they've been able to, keep that, that South branding and that identity of the squad. So, it's not a surprise. Some of the names that you've seen in there, it's heavily Hawick. You've got an influence there of Selkirk as well and Musselburgh, Premiership teams. And then after that, Jed probably are maybe not as well represented. Even though they're in the Premiership, it does signal that perhaps that there's players in other positions from Hawick, Selkirk and Musselburgh that are perhaps just a little bit better quality. But then it's littered with some from the national leagues as well, which is great to see. So, Kelso and Melrose and Gala getting really good representation in the squad. Years ago, you would have expected it to be completely the other way around. But it's great to see, and I think there's maybe an opportunity to have another couple of players in for that bit of experience for young players in a wider squad. But it's I think that there's nobody there that I was really surprised by. I wrote a list down of a team, and I think most of the players in this squad are Super Series now, so they've left. Badenhorst I had in the starting lineup in the second row, so I'm not surprised to see him in there. Owenson as well from Musselburgh, really, really good players. But it's certainly, I think I counted as well, there's about 5 fly halves in the backs as well. So I think that in terms of the South brand of rugby, they're going to be chucking the ball about. They're going to be playing rugby. There's going to be good rugby players in there because the likes of McComb, Hutchison as well. And obviously you've got Craig Dodds in there, Kirk Ford, they can all play, Donald Crawford can play fly half, so they've got really a good blend of back. So I think when they start lineup, the first game, when I see that team sheet, it'll be interesting to see who gets the nod, but it's exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good addition. We complain about the 15s rugby still being played at this time, and then you squeeze in a 15s competition, but it's slightly different, and I think if it works, which I want it to work, hopefully it'll find its place, because the competition itself, although they only play 2 games, there's the opportunity perhaps to play another game and have the round robin, the old inter-district. But it's going to be exciting to see these players pull in the South shirt.
Of course, no Super Series players in there. We've already seen comments, a couple of comments. May Sinclair, I think, was one who said, "Oh, that's devaluing the actual standard of the South." What's your own view on that?
No, I think that it would devalue it if we were talking about 10, 12 years ago. But rugby's changed, and I think that there's a real drive to create that stepping stone up to professional rugby. So you've got players playing professional rugby, you've got the players playing amateur rugby that then step up to play semi-pro because they want to have that career path. What incentive have you then got for these players that are playing amateur rugby to have their own step up? Those ones that either aren't at the level or don't want to play semi-pro rugby and play in the Super Series, do they just play for their clubs and then they go away and into the distance until they're wheeled back out again, service their clubs, and then they just go through that cycle? I think the addition of this inter-district competition is great because you've got Premiership players and National 1 players potentially going to represent their region, and it's great. I don't think it devalues anything. I think you'll see a really high level of quality rugby between all the 4 districts. If you want to watch that step up, go and watch the Super Series because the quality of rugby is really good. And if you're still not happy with that, go and watch a professional game. Go and watch Edinburgh and Glasgow. So they're the stepping stones. They're the reasons why they're in place. I think this is a great addition. But the semi-pro players that are playing Super Series, they've already made their step up. They've went elsewhere to play rugby. give these guys a little shot of something different. I think it's brilliant. I completely do not agree with it devaluing it, because these are the amateur players that we love backing, that the clubs have nurtured and supported, and the towns love watching them play. It then puts them in a different squad, and hopefully we can get everybody round to look at these players, shine a light on them for a couple of games, and hopefully they all do well.
Well, I'm absolutely with you on this one, because I think, there was always this struggle. Do we have the Southernites? Do we have the South representing the region? Now we've got a place where they fit beautifully between club and semi-pro, and this is exactly why we can kind of happily live with the South being in that sort of middle stepping stone, and for all the reasons that you just said. And I think it's going to be great for, some of these players. You've still got some of the old guard as well. Bruce McNeil, who's the only player to play in all 4 South matches against the Barbarians, also Northumberland and Caledonia a couple of times. So he's hoping to play a 5th and a 6th as well, which would be quite remarkable for someone who's, 62 years old now. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I think he's just doing it for the kit, to be honest. But it's great.
He does like kit, doesn't he?
It's great to see, and the little threads in there. Obviously, the 2 brothers in the Rennicks, great to see them in there. I think Andrew Cochrane and Andrew McComb from Selkirk have had really, really strong seasons. McClymont as well, brilliant to see them in there. But you think of McNeil. McNeil was at Hawick for a long, long time, behind that scrum. A lot of times when they've had a little bit of success and they've went through turbulent times and big games. Jay Linton's in there as well. They're 2 players that they're at different ends of the spectrum. That's exactly what the South is about, getting those players into the one environment and learning off each other, creating those rugby partnerships and those rugby memories that you look at the clubs now, when you look in the sponsors or you look in the stand, these players that played years and years ago have formed those connections through things like the South. And that's one of those examples. McNeil and Linton, completely different spectrums in terms of the ends of what their careers are. But he puts them in the same squad. They have to work together. They've got to fight for the same position, pretty much. So that's the interesting thing of it. But yeah, completely behind the South in the way that it is now. Players have moved on to do something different. These players have got the opportunity now to make a good stab at it for the South.
So the competition format, each team will play 2 matches, with the second game being a double header at Braidholme in Glasgow, home of GHA. That's on Sunday the 21st of May. So we've got obviously the Tuesday the 9th of May, which is the South against Edinburgh. That's at Netherdale. Glasgow will be playing Caledonia that day, and the winners of that one play the winners of the South game. So it's as simple as that, and the losers will play the losers, and that's how it's going to be worked out. Not ideal, but it's a start, and hopefully in the future the whole thing will shift to maybe January, February. That would be quite nice, I think, and have a round robin or something. Anyway, finally today, a mention for the Berwick Sevens on Sunday. We're at Scremerston from 1 o'clock to bring you live coverage of the event. It's a pool system rather than a knockout. Let's have a quick look at the draw. In Pool 1, you've got Gala, Peebles and Selkirk. Pool 2, Hawick, Jesmond, Jackals and Edinburgh Ackies. Pool 3, it's Watsonians, Melrose and Durlston. And Pool 4, finally, you've got Jed Forest, you've got the hosts Berwick and also Kelso.
Yeah, I think that there's some competitive pools in there. I think the Pool 1 is going to be pretty interesting between Gala, Peebles and Selkirk. I think that'll be an interesting pool, because you would think that Selkirk, obviously, on the balance of where they're positioned in the 15 season and the personnel that they do have, you would think that they would probably start that as favourites. But Gala, are a good 7 as well. And I think Peebles are well coached by Ian Chisholm. And I think that they'll learn a lot of lessons from their tie against Stirling at Melrose 7. So it's certainly going to be an interesting pool. But the other ones, perhaps, Edinburgh Ackies, probably favourites in Pool 2. You would say that in Pool 3, Watsonians played really, really well at the Melrose 7s. They're in with Melrose, who equally, in terms of the club teams, played pretty well. So, it's going to be a tight between those two. You would imagine Earlston will be but they will be the whipping boys in that group. I think it'll be difficult for them to pick up a win. And in the final one, you've got to say Jed Forest. I think that there'll be a few sore heads from Kelso on the way back down in the bus if they get a good result. So I'd imagine that might be a 2-day event for those boys. So you might see a different squad going for Kelso on that Sunday. So, you would imagine that there's a couple of pools that you've probably got standout favourites, but there'll be a couple of tight pools in there as well.
Gala and Melrose on the top of the table. Gala number 1 because of their win earlier on in the season. Watsonians 3rd third with 18, Peebles 13, Enbrackies 11, Hawick 10, Kelso 6, Selkirk 5, Berwick 3, and Jed Forest still to get off the mark. Melrose were the only team, of course, to score any points at Melrose. I've always sort of thought that Melrose Sevens should stand alone anyway, shouldn't really be part of the Kings of the Sevens, purely for that reason that very few managed to get any points. What's your own thought on that?
I think I totally agree. I think it'll be interesting to see come the end of the table if those 3 points that they picked up meant anything. But I do agree. I think that when you start watching the teams go through the rounds, Jed and Enbrackies was a brilliant game in the prelims, and they're two teams that probably can compete, in terms of sevens against the invitational teams. So, when it started going through, you knew it was all kind of invitational rugby after the quarterfinals, really. They all got through, they got through comfortably, and it was then an invitational final and semi-final. So, it's a different tournament. It was like when the Falcons came. The Falcons went to a few tournaments, would rack up wins, and they would be sitting pretty high in the Kings of the Sevens. But were they committing to all the tournaments? It was a difficult kind of quandary to try and figure out. But the 3 points themselves might not be a huge thing come the end of the season. But if it was the difference between winning or losing Kings of the Sevens, then there's definitely an argument there. But certainly tight at the top between, I think, Enbrackies in 5th. Peebles had a good start at pre-season as well in 4th. Gala got off and running well as well, but obviously they've got 15s commitments as well this weekend, so I think that's why it's going to be an interesting weekend at Berwick, and I think it'll be good to finally get our kind of teeth into a full 7 season, because Melrose got us off and running last weekend.
Okay, and so 6 events still to go. Do not write off Jed Forest. They might have no points at the moment, but a couple of wins, and potentially, they've got some great players. They had the 3 Youngs, you've got the 2 Walkers, and other people as well. It's a very talented Jed side, and a couple of wins, all of a sudden they're in the top 3.
Yeah, Jed. I'm not even apprehensive about the fact that they've got no points on the board yet, because I watched them on Saturday and I just think that they just know how to play sevens. They've obviously been concentrating on it for a while, but they've still got players out with that squad that if there's any injuries or changes, they can bring them in, and there's not a lot of disruption. I thought the new Walker, the mulleted Walker, was a brilliant addition.
Yes.
A real robust player, battering ram, and I think when you get out with, when we start playing tired teams and weaker teams, I think he'll really flourish in that squad, because he's a really big ball carrier, skillful player. His brother Lewis was back to full fitness as well, looking really, really sharp. And the Youngs looked fit. The Youngs looked really, really sharp. I thought that their balance of play. I've always liked Jed. I hated playing them, but I really, really like them at sevens. I just think they're a classy team, and the battle, as I say, between them and Enbrackies was really good. But Jed Forest, I think a couple of wins, and this weekend is lined up to get them back into position, because other teams have other commitments, and you think that, a couple of wins gets them back on the road, and they'll make a fist of it again.
Well, we'll be there, certainly looking forward to that. Talking of Jed, we must mention Mr. Paulo Ferreira, who we thought we'd never see again, and it's great to see him part of the South.
Great to see him in there as well. He's a dangerous player at 15s for opposition to try and deal with at the scrum, but also get him 5 metres out. He's a hard guy to try and stop, so great to see him, and it will probably be more of a pink and white hoop shirt, but it's great to see him in a South jersey. Well,
that's just about it for today. Now, an absolutely packed programme as usual. We'll be back next Friday for the Friday Rugby Preview, when we'll be previewing the Langham Sevens and also the Preston Lodge against Berwick match that day, plus of course Gala play Ayr, which could be important if Kelso come unstuck at Highland, which of course is not going to happen. But there's still some rugby left this season, that's for sure, and we'll be covering it from me and from Dale. Bye-bye for now.